Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video. What you might not know is that I have a podcast called Kylie Lewis Podcast, which is also on SoundCloud and iTunes. So if you'd prefer to listen to the audio version of this, you can go over there and just search Kylie Lewis Podcast and listen to the audio version of this there. Otherwise, stick with me here to watch this conversation that I'm having with someone who I recently came across on Instagram. Her name is Elizabeth Rose, and she is someone that I was first drawn to because of the aesthetics of her Instagram posts that were, to me as an artist, just really beautiful, and I felt really drawn to them. And in fact, you'll hear in this episode that one of her graphic posts that she made actually inspired one of my recent paintings that I created. So Elizabeth is what she would call a light worker, a paradigm shifter, a thought leader, and a coach. And to me, she was just someone who I could really relate to. And I felt really drawn to her energy. And I think you might feel the same when you watch or listen to this episode. But primarily, what we talk about and what she shares is how to turn your challenges that you face in your life, whether they're really big, grandiose things that happen that feel like you're becoming someone new, or if you're just slightly triggered by something that happens, in your daily life, these challenges can be looked at as sacred initiations, and that's how Elizabeth puts it. So toward the end of the conversation, you might want to write down the steps that she shares because they have already been super helpful to me in my own life. And they're just very specific ways that you can turn your challenges into sacred initiations. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And here we go. Enjoy. I don't even remember when I first came across you, but it was sometime in the last like 4 to 5 months maybe. And what really got me to begin with was the visual of your Instagram. Like it spoke
I
to my
love that.
soul so much. I was just like, oh my goodness. I just felt like, because I'm an artist myself,
Yeah.
and I could feel that in your Instagram that you're an artist. You're definitely like a visual artist.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so it's really amazing to hear that feedback because I didn't always think of myself as an artist. Just the way that I was raised was very like it was all about athletics, and I think I was disconnected from that part of myself for so long. And I've always been really into cooking, and I was like, okay, I think that's like my creative expression. And then like more and more as I become more and more myself and more authentic, I'm like, oh, I guess I am an artist. And that's actually what resonates with me way more than like, you know, being athletic or that end of things. And so it's beautiful to hear that reflection because I feel like that is more like my higher self that's continuing to come online. And then also one of my main intentions through Instagram is like, I want what I put out to be inspiring and like activate something, but
Mm.
even beyond just like the words. So I want it to like be an experience, even if you just like, scrolled through. So that's really cool. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your intention is definitely landing, and it's definitely coming through.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I have to tell you, your like digital images that you were putting together, I think specifically there was one around maybe like the new moon or maybe it was Lionsgate.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that one, and then I maybe around the same time I found you, I really kind of broke through with my paintings that I've been making.
Oh, wow.
And so I found this process I'm using is I make like a digital collage similar to what you're doing,
Oh, cool.
and
Okay.
then I paint that collage. And
Whoa.
so I was really inspired what you were doing, and I just like I made one. I don't know if you saw it. It has like a girl sitting on like a dresser, and that has
I think I
two
did see it.
leopards like facing her, and that has Saturn above her
Oh,
head.
oh my
So
gosh.
you inspired that like essence, and that like, bringing in like the animals with the planet. And it was just, yeah, you definitely inspired
Wow.
me. So
And your paintings are so incredible.
Thank
So
you.
I love that. It's so
Yeah.
cool to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love the internet for that reason. I mean, it's complicated, of course, but it is such a beautiful tool if you can use it that way.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I agree.
yeah. So speaking of your Instagram, I wanted to ask you too about your handle because it's interesting, and I had to like go look it up what it even meant because I didn't know.
Yeah.
So tell us what your Instagram handle is and what it means and why you chose that because I'm sure there's like a feeling and a meaning behind it for you.
Yeah, definitely. I love that question. So thanks for asking. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I don't always sometimes I don't know like where to plug that because it is such a, I was looking for like a word that that I felt. I mean, it's hard now to like create Instagram handles, right? Like because everything is taken. So I was like, I really want a word that I feel like I resonate with and that can carry a certain essence and intention. But what could that possibly be? And I came across the word adeptist, and adeptist actually means like a highly skilled alchemist. It's kind of like I think it's like an old English word that we don't really use anymore, but I've always been really connected to the whole, like, I felt like I'm an alchemist. I feel I resonate with that word. And so when I found adeptist, I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like I've never heard that word used really in that context. And I feel like my my mission and what I am devoted to is really like turning lead into gold, or really embodying like this alchemist archetype of transmuting darkness into light. Or, I've always been really into herbs and creating alchemy with that or with food. So I just really love the whole essence of the word alchemy. And so an adeptist is that it's like a highly skilled alchemist. And that's also what I really desired to inspire within people, like that we're all alchemists, we're all adeptists. We're here to transmute energy into its highest form, basically.
Mm, that is so cool. I love that so much. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I that word alchemy, I actually never knew what that even meant fully until I used to work in the restaurant business and I was like a manager that opened up a bar called Alchemy
Oh,
in where
cool.
I'm from. And I was like, what does
Wow.
this even mean? Right. And it was obviously that concept, but to do with like you said, even with food and cocktails and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
yeah. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that. That's really cool. And I
yeah, of
love that
course.
that word is so unique because when you see it, it makes you go, what is that? It's not
Yeah,
alchemy, right? It's like, I've never even heard this word before.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I didn't know it. I actually found it through like doing one of those word searches where you can like type in a word and then it'll show like it's not like the synonyms, it's just words that are kind of like would be in that category. I don't know what the it's like a dictionary thing, but it's like all words that could possibly pertain to the word like moon or the word goddess or the word alchemy. Like you can do a search. So that's how I found it actually.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. I could get lost searching like and I don't know if it's like it's obviously like a art form, right? Like
Yeah.
creating like branding for anything is just like
Yeah.
you can get just lost in it. It's so fun to play with words and the meaning of words and
Totally. I agree.
yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
So I think that actually is a perfect way to kind of transition the way that you described, being an alchemist or an
Yeah.
adeptist. Um, when I was drawn to you, and the reason that we fully actually were able to connect was because you had this free masterclass
Yeah.
that you put out. And it was specifically on this topic that I resonated with so much, which was transforming challenges into sacred initiations and
Yeah.
looking at them in that way. And the reason that I resonated so much is because, as I shared with you in an email, last year I self published my first book, and
Mhm.
it's called Coming Clean. And that was kind of like a self help and memoir book, based on that idea, that concept of looking at your life and the challenges within it,
Yeah.
and using it as, really stepping out of victimhood
Yeah.
and saying, this is happening for me. How can I look at this as if it's happening for me?
Yes.
And that was the biggest shift I ever made in my life. And
Yeah.
it's the only way that I was able to, come clean and release so many behaviors that I was leaning on to self soothe.
Yeah.
Because I think that ultimately, that facing those challenges, if we're viewing them as anything other than a sacred initiation or whatever words people resonate with,
Yeah.
um, then we're viewing them as they're happening to us and we're a victim. So
Right.
therefore we must numb and self-soothe and avoid and distract ourselves from what is going on.
Yeah.
So I loved reading that long Instagram post about it. And then I loved attending the master class and hearing what you had to say.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And what I find so fascinating about just being a human is that, challenges are always around the corner, right?
Yeah.
They don't go away. And in fact, it almost feels like the moment you decide to start waking up and you decide to start being conscious, there's even more challenges that you become aware
Mm.
of, right?
Mhm.
Because you're kind of like
Mhm.
turning the light on in your life and you're like,
Yes.
oh shit, there's a lot
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
um,
100% yes.
yeah, so much. And I'd love for you to share the one that, your main kind of challenge that you experienced last year.
Yeah.
But what I found, even 2 days after your masterclass, I had really, a challenge that I hadn't been met with for a couple of years. And
Mm.
it was a difficult experience involving, one of my parents, which I think is a really, unique, challenge that we're faced specifically like in our late 20s, early 30s, like during
Mm.
our Saturn return.
Yeah.
That is so jarring for
Mm.
that like child self within us, and
Yeah.
it's such a transition, right? So I used
Right.
your steps.
I love that.
Yes, I literally, in the moment, I was, it's almost as if you would put words to things that I was somewhat doing already, but to
Totally.
have that in my head of like remembering that you did this, or like
Yeah.
you said this and it was very specific. I was like, okay, like let's just practice it then. Like this is such an opportunity to practice those steps. So
Yeah. I love
so
that. Thanks for sharing that.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
tell us about, um just this idea of really looking at challenges as if they're happening for us as a sacred initiation.
yeah, totally. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. And also, like, you mentioned that once you started to really look at challenge as like this is happening for me, not to me, that everything changed in your life. And I think that sometimes it can be triggering, I think, to people to be like to come to that when, I think sometimes like, oh, is this gonna like trigger some people if I speak to challenge in this way? Obviously, I don't want to undermine people's experiences, but you said it perfectly of it's actually such a disservice to ourselves to keep ourselves in a position of victimhood. It's actually like it's one of the ways that we like deeply self-sabotage ourselves, and the truly the only way to genuinely and authentically overcome what we might consider as a challenge is to take ourselves out of that victim position, because that is just like a spiral that you're going to stay in until you decide to opt out of it. And so I think that there can be a misunderstanding that, you know, viewing challenge from this lens is bypassing, or we're not, you know, naming it for what it is. But actually, in my experience, like, in order to not bypass it, in order to not numb out and not continue to, you know, go in this cycle, to actually break out of it, break through it, we have to start to look at, like, what is this teaching me, and what's the opportunity, and how is life, or how is whatever you resonate with, like, how is life, how is my higher self, how is the universe trying to initiate me right now, and where am I, like, actually self-sabotaging because I'm resisting that opportunity, I'm resisting that initiation. And so I really believe, and I've experienced that, as you start to adopt this mindset, that, one, you move through your stuff a lot quicker, because you're not going in this cycle that's just kind of self-defeating and self-sabotaging. You move through things a lot quicker, and not only are you moving things quicker, you're growing a lot faster, because you're so willing to look at why and what is showing up in your life, and how to actually use that to transform. It's really just a choice. And from my perspective, it's just like it's a more enjoyable way to live. It's not always fun when you're in the middle of it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's more enjoyable, it's more empowering, it's more transformative, it's more elevating. Like, so that's really something that I've always really viewed challenge from that lens. But I would say that in the last year, I really stopped escaping all parts of myself. Like, there were still things that I was really like, I was avoiding going into. And for whatever reason, I think it was just I was ready. There were certain things in my life that I really started to say, like, I won't tolerate this anymore. I'm claiming this, like, this is what I'm creating. This is what I want. Anything that's not this, like, I'm not available for. And when you start to really get serious and start to, like, really claim what it is that you want, and you get your energy behind that, life will start giving you those initiations to walk through really quickly. Because the fact is that you're not an energetic match for those things yet. But when you move through those edges, you become that in the process. And so that's was really my experience, and why I wanted to teach and offer that masterclass. Because I feel like this year in particular was like, my higher self was like, you're not ignoring anything anymore. Like, it's all on the table. You're going to look and feel, you're going to look at and you're going to feel all of it, and you're going to love all of it, and you're going to make peace with all of it, and you're going to just, like, you're going to accept where you are, and you're going to move through it. Like, that was what the first 6 months of this year was, on like a deeply profound level, that I part of myself thought, like, is this ever going to end? Like, is this what's happening? And but I knew in my heart, like, no, this is big. Like, something's happening here, and I'm going to trust that. And I can say I'm on the other side of it. And I'm, like, eternally grateful for that season of my life, because it was, like, I mean, packed with so much gold. Like, I've yeah, so that's kind of been my process the last, 6 months, but really, yeah, the last 6 months, I would say.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So, when you're talking about this, I imagine so many people can resonate, obviously, for all different reasons. But obviously, this year, over the last year, has just been forcing or inviting, I guess, a lot of us to
Yeah.
look at aspects of ourselves that are no longer in alignment. And I love the way that you talk about it too. Like, it's just, it comes to a point where things just aren't an energetic match for you.
Yeah.
And you can feel that once you're available to feel that.
Yeah.
And some part of it, although, like you said, like when you're in it, it sucks and it's hard,
Mhm.
but it is also so refreshing and supportive to have like this connection with something that's so like pure and clear, and you're so in tune with it that
Yeah.
you feel like you're being guided truly. It's like, okay, I will listen to this. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
You put really I feel like you clearly understand that experience because you spoke to it like very like you've experienced that. Yeah. Yeah, there is something really magical I would say about that space. Um where it's like in the physical realm, it can appear like everything's kind of crumbling depending on the situation. I mean, there's like degrees to which we experience these initiations. For me this year, it was kind of like anything that isn't in the highest alignment is going to completely like crumble. And that's also what I if I'm real with myself, that's what I asked for. So I was like, okay, here we are. But there's something really magical about that space where it's like, even when everything feels like it's completely falling apart, there is this spark or this like just this there's something that you connect to where you just know. There's like at least that was my experience, and I think that that's maybe a choice to be willing to connect to that and not be the victim in the situation. But um I could feel that this was really big, like this was really significant, and like this sense of I will remember this season of my life for the rest of my life because this is when everything changed. Like that was kind of the sense that I felt. Like I'm sure I'll feel this way again at some point, but this was a massive turning point where it's like, I'm not the same person in any way, shape, or form that I
mhm.
was, January 1st that I am now. Like, and I could feel that that was happening, even though it kind of sucked sometimes.
Yes. So, like hearing you say all of this, and I think I have a couple of ideas just from following you on Instagram, but feel free to
Yeah.
share whatever is true for you.
Yeah.
What what initiated this big, massive shift for you?
Yeah. Yeah. This is really fun to have this space to like actually talk about it in this sense. Cause it's like, you can only articulate so much through Instagram. Um, and yeah, I feel like I'm still kind of um processing like, wow, like so much in my life just completely fell away. But the really what my experience was, um last year, so I had been building and scaling a product based company for the past 4 years. And last year, during, all the things that were unfolding, I had a point where I was going through massive, massive upgrades, massive, like, everything from like literal like body rashes to working with like entities, like clearing that type of stuff to I mean, it was just like I was opening up to everything, and it was like, now's the time. Like, it's time to step into your power and it's time to experience this. And I was like, holy cow. And so I was working with that. And then um, I was starting to have this feeling of like, oh shit, I feel like it's just this deep knowing. I don't know if anyone else experiences this, but sometimes like I feel like my intuition around certain things is like, it's almost like I know like before it's actually meant to happen, like a year before it's meant to happen or 6 months before it's meant to happen. I was like, I can feel that I'm going to be called to release this entire business. And but it's not time yet. But knowing this is, I'm in a weird space because I had created a lot of responsibility for myself, that maybe wasn't fully in alignment with what my soul truly wanted, where it's like I had investors, I had just the way that I had started to build my business was like, okay, you've got to answer to quite a few things. And as I was, really making sense of my experience of what 2020 was, and I really feel like we're in it as a collective, and we're really just getting started with a massive, massive purge and um, sacred initiation of the collective and of the earth right now. I was like, oh man, like I've you could say I'm like, some people would probably call me a conspiracy theorist. I've been connected to what I feel has been unfolding in the world since I was like 11. Like I just had this knowing of certain things. It was just my truth. I'm not saying that it's the ultimate truth, but it was always my truth. And that's what I've been connected to. So last year was kind of this experience of like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening while I'm alive. Like I knew this would happen, but it's happening right now. So what does this mean for me? And it was just this instant experience of like, whoa, I'm like, timelines are shifting and I'm not actually where I need to be to do the work that I know my soul came here to do. Like this is such a confined box for me of being this like startup CEO that like, that was kind of what I had started to live into. And there was a lot of validation for me there. I felt like I was really validated by my friends, by family, by my ego. And so coming to that space of being like, oh wow, this is limiting what I'm able to, what I feel I'm here to offer, and the way that I'm here to serve. And so I went through a process with that. I went through a year of not really living up to what I had said to, my investors and different things that I would do, because I was going through a massive, like a new layer of spiritual awakening for me, and activation. And that in and of itself was challenging, because I felt like I was living these two lives where I was like, oh, like I know, like I said I was going to build this thing, and I said I was going to do it this way, and here were the milestones and the timelines, and yet I'm taking a month off of Instagram, which was at the time the company's Instagram, to like, you know go through like a wild experience and come out on the other side. So I was just in this really interesting place that was creating a lot of uh there was a lot of stress in that. Like I knew that I was following what I was meant to be following, and yet it was kind of like I had all this baggage, and I was like, gosh, I really need to deal with this, but I don't know. So that's kind of where it started. And then, you know, early this year, I really, at the start of the year, I really started to take really what the vision that I have for my life, and what I know deep down in my heart that I'm here to bring forth into the world a lot more seriously. Meaning like, okay, I can say that this is what I'm creating, and I can say that I trust it's all happening, but is my energy really behind that? Am I really truly like a stand for that? Am I in integrity with that? And I felt like I really, really took everything, just I really claimed it. And I was like, it needs to happen now. The time is now. I believe deeply that we need, leaders and light workers, and people who are here to live from the soul, not the ego, to really step up to the plate right now. We need that. People are looking for something different, because we have an opportunity to shift a paradigm. But what we see in the mainstream is we're just doing the same thing over again. So we need people to really rise, is what I believe. So to me, that was an invitation. Like, you got to step it up. It's not actually about you. It's really about, what are you a stand for, and what opportunities are you providing for people to say like, oh, that's available for me, like, okay. So in that experience, it was like everything that was built on fear, shame, lack, any like residue where like these lower density things were embedded in was like we're stripping it all away. And so I don't I'll share more of the specifics, but truly if I had to sum it up, I it was as if I it's like I had nothing. Like I was lit it was like everything was like falling through my fingers. And part of it was like I was like, okay, I'm meant to give that up. I'm meant to give that up. And then it'd be like, oh, and that's gone too. Oh, and that's gone too. And that was a really interesting space to be in. And it made me question a lot of things. Oh, am I supposed to be with my partner? Is that supposed to go away? Like, that would be really like, that's a whole other level. So there was a lot of like introspection around that. Um, the products were really my source of revenue. And while I knew that in the product based company and startup was really actually limiting um the amount of income that I could experience personally because of the way I was scaling this company, and it wasn't really in alignment with what I desired and what I was claiming. So I knew that that had to go, but also that was really where all of my income was coming from. And so to kind of and and it came to a point where I was like, I really want to, I know I need to like close down the shop. I need to do that. And then it was interesting. I had my website through Shopify, and just like everything during these times is a little bit wild. I actually got a message from their team and they basically were like, we have to shut down your website because these products are pseudo pharmaceuticals, which is, I mean, that was their language, not mine. And you're not allowed to sell these. We're banning these from. And I was like, okay, universe. So I guess we're closing the shop now. And so then that happened. And so just like these things. And I went through a period where I had to really face a lot of stuff, fear around security and finances and things that I had really, really, really resisted addressing in my life for so long. Like I never wanted to go into scarcity. I never wanted to go into those things. And so those were areas of my life that I'd really bypassed. Like I had inauthentically been like in this space of like, yeah, I'm like super abundant. Like I'm like I'm just playing in this realm, but I never actually addressed the deep security wounds that were there. So that whole experience was like, well, here you go. Like, how does this feel? Like, how are you going to navigate in this space where now you're not, and I also realized that so much of my identity and worth, and I had no idea, was actually really wrapped up into my position as what this image of being this CEO of this startup. And that's what was validated in my life for the last 4 years. And I didn't consider myself someone that really, I wasn't aware of that until I let it go. And then I was like, oh shit, like, who am I? What am I? I woke up like for like a month straight when I was living in Tulum for a bit this year. And like, who the fuck am I? And like, do I even, for the first time in my life, I was like, am I even adding value to the world? Like, what am I doing? Should I just like stop everything? Like, can I just evaporate? Like, what's going on? Like, that's kind of where I had gotten to. And that was a very foreign experience for me because I think, what I learned through this experience is for me, going and moving toward a vision and constantly creating and doing these things was actually my way of bypassing. It was my way of, oh, but like everything's going great. Like, here we go. Let's just keep going. And I didn't know that until everything was wiped. And then I had to be like, oh shit, this is what I actually think about myself. Oh shit, these things live here. Oh wow. Like really started to be able to get a really good look into what was actually vibrating underneath all of that. And that was really the work that that these last, the first 6 months of 2021 was for me, was like, oh, okay, this is like what was underneath. This is why all of this had to go away, because even if it was relevant for a time, and even if it was offering, helping people or offering value, or it's not that it was, all of it was beautiful and fine and good, and it served a purpose, and I'm so grateful for all of it. But underneath that, there were still foundations that were rooted in fear and lack and not enoughness and shame and, pressure, and just energies that weren't actually in alignment with who I say I am, and who I have said I'm committed to becoming. And so therefore it's like it all had to get washed away, to the point where, you know, my partner and I, we have like a storage unit that's smaller than this room. And that's like currently, we're in such a rebirthing phase. It was like we're purging everything. And I never thought, I mean, I'm so grateful for this year, because I have never been more uh untethered, more free, more boundless in my entire life. And I had no idea that this was the route to get to this point. But at the point that I'm in now is like, holy shit, anything is possible. Like, what do I want? What do I want to create? Where do I want to go? And that I would have never known was possible had I not leaned into that experience, because it's so easy to want to hold. Like I saw that. I was like, ooh, maybe I should, like, truly, I got to Tulum and I was like, maybe I should go back to Colorado and be like, sorry guys, that was just like a pause on that. We're going to pick up where we left off, and we're going to reopen the company. And that was just like a little phase I went through. Like that's, like I had those thoughts, and then I was like, no, like, you're in it. I don't know how long this is going to take, but you're dying. Like you're everything that you've done for the last 7 years really is dying. Like that was the experience. So yeah, I know that was kind of long, but I wanted to really paint that picture for you guys.
Oh, I'm so grateful that you did. I'm feeling so many things because one, I resonate with your story so much, and I like feel it, like I'm like feeling it like while you're saying it,
Yeah.
because only when you've gone through that can you really truly understand what it means to die to who you were, like to truly let everything fall away. There's a chapter in my book called The Purge, and
Mhm.
we did something similar where we moved to Colorado actually
Oh, wow.
temporarily. Yeah. We packed our car and we sold like 90%, sold or donated 90% of our belongings. And I really truly understand what you mean by, everything is just falling away, literally everything. And it
Yeah.
feels like you're dying and you have no idea what you can hold on to. You can't hold on to anything.
Yeah.
And it's like the most terrifying experience, yet it's also, like you said, it's a rebirth that gives you this world of possibilities. And you didn't realize you were being so restricted and weighed down by who
Yeah.
you thought you had to be for the world.
Yeah. 100%.
So I loved hearing you talk about it.
Oh,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for having the courage to lean into it and to show others what's possible.
Yeah.
Um, because I think we're all kind of on the precipice of that,
Yeah.
being broken open. And
Yeah.
it really comes down to your willingness to lean in. And when you do, it will be scary and it will
Mhm.
hurt. And it will be potentially the hardest thing you'll ever have to do in your life.
Yeah.
But it's so worth it. And it's so just a whole different world to live in. It's like you said, you're on the other side of it now and it's still processing, but you're different than who you were before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's really no other way to like get that point across.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I I've been having so many conversations with my partner because I'll turn to her and I'm like, "Danielle, I realized like I wasn't actually I wasn't actually happy before. Like I I I had levels of, overall life was good, but I didn't realize how much of my sense of okayness was based on something outside of myself. Like, I didn't realize how many cords I still had that were attached to these different types of things being particular outcomes, as well as I didn't realize how much energy was trapped in some of these kind of lower energies that I just completely, brushed over and built on top of them versus going into them, and how much they were actually draining my energy to the point where I wasn't actually present. And I was very much in certain ways living in a space of, while I was creating and doing cool stuff, I was also still very much connected to living in a space of trauma because I was trying to keep going and doing certain things. And I'm at this space where it's like I'm like, "Oh my goodness, like I didn't even know I didn't know I should say I knew that it was possible to feel this good, but I didn't know that these were the things that were actually preventing me from experiencing this much presence, this much peace, this much stability, this much possibility." Um I had no idea. And so I guess I just want to share that. It's partially like a, I think it's powerful to reflect on it for myself. It's like, because the more that we lean into these experiences, the more that as they show up, we can trust what's on the other side. And I would agree that everyone in some way is on the precipice of something really potent. At least that's, like you said, the invitation, um, for everyone and the collective as a whole right now. And um, yeah, it really does get better. Like, it
Mhm.
really does. There's so much potential on the other side, and I think that's the thing that's scary to our egos and to, you know yeah, to our smaller self, of like, when you're in that space, there's so many unknowns. You don't know how long that experience is going to be, per se. You don't know what you might discover. You don't know what you could be then called to do as a result. You don't know, and that's ultimately what presents, um a true threat to the nervous system. But if we can start to remind ourselves that the only place that growth truly happens is when we're navigating an unknown. Like, when you're in the known, there's not growth happening, period. And that's okay. We can have levels of known within the unknown, but ultimately where we want to get to in our lives is, and that's what I feel like this experience has created the space for in my life, is like, it's one giant unknown. I don't know where I'm going to be. I literally don't know where I'm going to be living a month from now. I don't know. There's so much possibility. I have no idea. It's all one giant unknown. And it's actually the most liberating space to be in, because anything's possible. And I trust life. I trust that now that I'm in this space, like, anywhere that I'm being taken is absolutely in my highest and best alignment. But we don't really get to experience the full kind of miracle of that is life, when we're anchored, when we're attached to those aspects of the known, because really all of the richness happens in that space of pure potential, of anything's possible, and I'm open to that, and I've created the space in my life to where that's available. Like I can lean into that space versus see it as a threat, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah, it is. Funny, I just finished a new painting yesterday that I just posted today, and I titled it Into the Unknown.
I love
Because
that.
yeah, so as you're talking, I'm like, yes, I'm right there with you. Um,
Yeah.
and I love for you to share. You don't have to share all of them if you don't
Yeah.
want, but some of the steps that are nonlinear, they're just more like, reminders.
Yeah.
And these are, I think what's helpful too, like I forget that maybe someone listening to this could be listening and go, okay, like I hear both of these women talking about like these huge, like life altering transformations that they went through, but how do you even like make that tangible for your like life today,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think, like we talked about, every single day provides you with these challenges that can
Yeah.
be looked at as sacred initiations. And
Yeah.
if you're in a relationship with someone, like there you go, right? It's going to
Yeah.
happen later tonight or tomorrow morning or
Totally.
whatever. Um,
Totally.
or if you have children, or if you are an adult child who's trying to be sovereign and you have parents,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, just sharing like a few of those steps would be really helpful, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I would love to. Yeah. Um, yeah, I definitely want to like bring it down to like the everyday, because once you once you really start to find your way in this, in whatever, I mean, this is just what I felt like, this is the process that I started to connect to in my own experience, but you might resonate with putting it into different words. But once you start to find your way in navigating those experiences, this is like how life just starts to move. And so bringing it down to like the everyday, we're faced with all sorts of opportunities to really, it comes down to like we're initiating ourselves. I see it as like self initiation. You're taking something and you're, if we want to bring in like the term of like an alchemist, like you're saying, I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to use it to create transformation. That's really what it comes down to. So that could be an experience of, for example, if you're trying to work with someone and they're not honoring your experience, is like they're not fully honoring a boundary that you have. I'm speaking from a recent experience. So this is just an everyday experience that we have, right? So they're maybe not honoring like a boundary that you're like, ooh, that doesn't feel really good that they asked me to do that because my boundary is this. Well, if there's options there, I could, which is what, the small part of myself want to do, is just kind of like complain about it and be like, god, this is so annoying. Like, don't people understand boundaries? Like, I can't believe this person's asking this. Like, are you kidding me? No, like, I'm not doing that. Like, maybe this just isn't, gonna work out because I just can't with this. And then I was like, okay, I'm witnessing that. That's one option. And of course, there's a time and a place to be like, yeah, that's crossing a boundary. But what I could see it as is, oh, wait a second. Well, not everyone can read my mind. To someone else, this isn't a boundary. So here's an opportunity to communicate my boundary and to be heard and to be seen in that, and put myself potentially in a more vulnerable situation and say, actually, I'm not, I can't do that for you, and this is why, or whatever the answer is. But depending on the intensity of the trigger or what you're experiencing, it might require, someone might really push up against your boundary, for example, and you feel deeply triggered. What what we do all of the time in our day-to-day life is something triggers us, and we do this unconsciously, but we instantly go and we distract ourselves. Like, start to notice what you're doing or what you just experienced when you pick up your phone and you start to scroll on Instagram. Like, what happened right before that? Was it a conscious choice of, I'd really love to look at Instagram right now? Maybe it was just a habitual choice, or maybe something literally just happened and that didn't feel really good in your system. And instead of like opening to that experience and starting to get curious, it was automatic that you just like, started to do something else. We do this all day. I'm not immune to it. It's more so I'm just hyper aware of when I'm doing it. And sometimes I still choose to do it. That's the reality. We're human. But this is happening in the micro moments all the time. And so what we the invitation that I see with, just the way that I desire to navigate through life, and what I want to share through that masterclass and through this, is like, as we can start to use those moments, as an opportunity to lean in, we have a breakthrough. We literally break through something that's actually been limiting us on so many levels and so many different areas of our life that we probably had no idea of. And I see, like, I love talking about triggers as like, it's literally your higher self giving you an opportunity to break through something. This is something that's owned you actually in so many different ways, for probably since you were a child. On some level, this has been preventing you from having an optimal experience in some way, shape, or form. So here we're going to give you an opportunity to, have that experience where your nervous system is like, ooh, that didn't feel good. And then it's like, what do you do from there? Do you, choose something to distract yourself, or do you lean in? And it's I will say that it's a dance, because sometimes things are, things are actually really intense to the nervous system. And I've been navigating this with my coach, um of like, okay, what's that line where actually it's important, like it's important to come to a space to self-soothe on some level. We obviously want to be conscious in that experience so that I can come into a grounded space. So then from that grounded space, I can then move into what this is actually bringing up for me. Because if I just, maybe it's too shocking to go right into it. Like, we have to give ourselves this. If you want to start to move through life in this way, the foundation to this, from my perspective, is radical self-love and radical self-acceptance and radical self-compassion. Like, that has to be the foundation, and it's not going to be natural um at all until you work on building that foundation. And I'm very much still on a journey with that, because my mind wants to go like, okay, come on, let's just move through it. Come on, Elizabeth, like, really, like, let's just fucking move through it. And that's like, whoa, where is that coming from? That's not my heart. That's not this, like, that's not my truth. So it's like, okay, whew, I'm like aware of this thing. How can I just like, that's the first step that I articulated in this, was like opening, literally just like, can I have more like of a heart opening experience, where instead of being like, oh God, like, can we just like move through this? Be like, okay, can we just like open to this? Like, what's here? It's not any more complicated than that. Like, what's here? Can I open up to to what's present for me? Period. And then it's like, once I've done that, can I actually be present? Like, so the next step is arriving. And it might sound simple, but that's really like the game changer, because the automatic response for most of us is to be anything but present. It's to, I used to do things like I'd be like, babe, like let's like go out to dinner tonight. Let's like do something. And I had no idea that that was like something that I was doing to like run away from stuff. I'd be like, let's go have a fun time. Like sounds super innocent, right? But it's like that was a way that I was avoiding a lot of stuff. And that was one of my things. It was just like, okay, let's go have this fun night out. And then I would just recycle everything or just come with me the next day. And I was in this cycle of like doing stuff like that. So it's like take a minute and like pause. Like, can I arrive in this space of, ooh, I've opened myself up to the discomfort. It doesn't feel good, but can I trust and can I arrive in this present moment and accept this present moment and trust that like there's an opportunity here, period. Like, I don't have to make sense of the experience. I don't have to have some like enlightened perception of the experience. Just can I be with it? Like, I can be super upset and can I just arrive in that space? Simple. Well, I mean, not simple, but really, like, you don't need to prematurely bypassing is actually when we like skip over this part and just be like, oh, well, I guess it just happened for a reason and like moving on. Like I've been that person. And that doesn't get you anywhere. It's fine in the moment, but it doesn't, it really delays your growth. And so from there, it's like like we have to feel. And I think, we can talk about the importance of feeling our feelings, but really like, and I'm still very much in my own journey of really unpacking just how powerful it is to go dive headfirst into an emotion. But what I can share is that is how we start to access so much wisdom. And so like that's where you will meet the divine, when you can travel down the portal of an emotion and go into that. It might not feel like it when you're in it, but the revelation and the like on the other side of that is like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea that that was there. I had no, wow, like there's just so much on the other side of diving headfirst into that feeling. And again, this isn't going to be like, you're not going to go this deep on like a daily, you're likely not going to need to go so deep. But as things start to arise, it might be literally 5 minutes where you're like with something and you let yourself come undone and you like hit pillows and you let it out and you cough and you scream. Like I release a lot of energy through coughing. That's like how it comes out for me. And I like, I let it move through. It might be 5 minutes of that. Or something might be way bigger and it's a process. But the feeling aspect is so important. And then I like to say that this is when you get to affirm this is my sacred initiation. Like, no matter how much the moment might be, again, it might be something simple like, ooh, that didn't feel good that they disrespected my boundary. I'm going to feel that anger for a moment and we're going to move through that. Or it might be something bigger, like what I shared, my experience was earlier this year. And so it was like continuously affirming, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I know this is my sacred initiation. I know I asked for this. Like the we say, we're the creators of our reality or create your own reality. The way that you create your own reality is not it's so mental. It's so like, how are you choosing to perceive something? You will shape your entire experience based on how you're choosing to perceive, period. It's so you can truly create whatever experience you want to create. Like there's infinite possibilities. If you want to label that experience as bad and horrible and like you failed, then that can be your experience and that will be your experience. And so it is like, that's what you're creating. If you want to say that this is exactly what I asked for. I know it's uncomfortable, but I know that this is getting me to where I want to go. I know that this is like the highway to where I said I want to be, and this is what's taking me there. This is the portal. This is the initiation. Then that will be your experience. Period. It's truly what you choose to, the lens that you choose to see life through. And that's how we create our experience. It's not literally, the physical will start to mirror that affirmation, but the practice that we're all here to learn is how it's very, very literally like our perception will determine our experience. That's point blank. So if you can affirm that those uncomfortable situations are actually, you've actually just reached a new level of and you're graduating. You have an opportunity to move through this thing. You wouldn't be given this if your higher self, if the universe, if you weren't ready. And so that's where we get to really like affirm, yes, this is happening for me. Yes, this is my sacred initiation. And then I say, then you can create space once you've felt, and giving yourself that space for it to be like, feeling isn't meant to look a certain way. Like feeling, I think I had so many blocks around feeling like years ago because I didn't know what that, it's so simple. This just shows how disconnected we've been conditioned, the way we've been conditioned, because I was like, well, what does that mean to feel? Like, I literally don't know, even though feeling is the basis of like being alive and being a human. And so as I started to make peace with like, feeling doesn't look a certain way. Feeling can literally be me like, I mean, truly, when I'm like going into something, I'm like hitting my mattress and like coughing. I look crazy. I look like I'm having like an exorcism. That's how it comes out for me a lot of times. Or it could be like laying in Shavasana and just being like, ooh, I feel this and it's uncomfy. It's not anything more than like literally being with what's present in your system, what's present in your body. But once we've done that, does not have to be pretty. It does not have to be, it's actually probably going to be it's messy. It's not, or it's could be uneventful. Like, it's nothing significant. But then once we felt that, then it's like we can go into the mind and we can process. But I feel it's like body leads, mind follows. If you try to go ahead of it and you don't process it in your system, and you just try to intellectualize it and make sense of it, which I've done that so many times in my life. Oh, I see the higher perspective. Here's why that happened. Here's why I called that in. Here's what I'm learning. Cool. But did I clear that energy from my system? No. So it just keeps happening again because I'm just intellectualizing it. And that's not clearing it. It's not letting it go, which it serves. It's still like it's a relevant part of the process, but we can't skip over the feeling part, is what I really want to like communicate. um so then it's like, process it, journal, talk to someone about it, talk to your coach or a therapist or a mentor or whatever. I mean, I would not be here right now if I didn't have support in my life that I've invested in, because that is, to me, that's so, I mean, I'd still be in it, which would be fine, but I'd like to move through things, you know quicker rather than slower. And it's been such a beautiful, I've never been so grateful for the support in my life. So it's like, process, and not necessarily, processing with, I mean, you can share some things with your spouse or your friends, but I think it's, depending on the situation, it's important to have support in your life. Um, and then the next step that I highlight is receive, and that to me is receiving support, receiving and that could be receiving support from an actual person. It could be receiving like body work. It could be receiving it could be literally sitting out in nature and intentionally receiving the energy and the love and just the light that is emanating from earth, from, the universe. Like I do that all the time. Or receiving, I'll just sit in meditation and intentionally receive love. Like it's not coming from anything. It's just, I'll just receive that. Like receive, let yourself feel supported, and give yourself the experience of like, I'm not alone in this. Like I am supported. I have so much resource, whether that's via nature or, all of the above. It's really important to resource ourselves. And then the final thing is let go. Like what needs to be let go of as a result. Like, and also, I will say, like, there came a point for me, and I know that this year was so divine, and I needed to go through the experience that I did of kind of this like 6 month of like straight up initiation. I will say, and I've processed this with my coach a lot, and she's like, this experience is really important for you. However, moving forward, like I would invite you into embracing a lot more ease, because I think there's a part of you that like went like straight down into the depths, and it was like, I'm getting initiated and like I'm coming out on the other side as like this light warrior, like fuck yeah, like we're going in. And I definitely have that in my spirit, and I think a lot of us do. um so what I will say is that there came a point where I was like, okay, I could stay in this. I could stay in this. And this is where we have to start to have discernment. And this is why I think having support in form of a mentor is so, so important, because there came a point where it was like, okay, if I stay in this any longer, like it's actually becoming a form of self-sabotage. It's time to set a boundary, let go. This chapter, we're going to close this chapter. So I literally said, when I was about to get off the plane and come back to Colorado for this month, I was leaving where I was. And as we were literally descending, I was like talking to my guides, speaking with my higher self, just connecting. And I was like, okay, when I step out of this plane, this chapter of like deep initiation, navigating the depths of my emotional landscape and my shadow and all of that, we're setting a boundary on that. We're closing that chapter, and we're integrating all that was into the everyday. These worlds need to come together. The part of me that just goes straight towards the light, straight towards creation, straight towards like the goal, and this part of me that just went so fucking deep, that was like, whoa, those worlds need to come together. And I need to let go of like this kind of idea that I need to stay here and that, whatever. But it's like, what needs to be let go of as a result of that process? And I will tell you, like, I wish that someone told me. I mean, I guess I just wasn't ready for it, because if I was ready for it, someone would have like this would
Yes.
have came into my life.
Yes.
But I'm like, gosh, like the amount of clarity, the amount of alignment, the amount of abundance, the amount of like creativity and what's accessible to me to be able to channel into my business or channel into all these different avenues, the way that I work with my clients, the way that I work in my group courses, it's so up leveled. It's so like it went from like 10 to 40. Like it's like quantum leaped from just going through that process. And that's the opportunity that we have every day. And that's not, we're so scared to go into it. But I can tell you, like, what's waiting on the other side of that, nothing's guaranteed. That's the point, isn't to know what's going to be, what the treasure is at the end of at the end of the process, at the end of the journey. But it has the potential to completely blow your mind and completely blow through any expectation that you ever had. And you just don't know until you lean in. And so that's kind of the last thing I would say on all of that, which it's like there's just so much potential and the universe just actually wants to bestow so much upon you. You just need to be an energetic match to receive that. And that's what initiations do. They allow you, they literally alchemize you into the energetic match that is required for you to receive at that next level. And so yeah.
Oh. I'm just letting myself kind of receive everything that you just
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for asking that.
Yes, yes. Oh, I feel so honored that we connected, and I know that you understand this, that like it obviously was meant to happen, and I was
Yeah.
able to receive the message that you were putting out, and that's why this worked out the way that it did.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I feel like as you're talking, like these are things, that even for me, like although I've been kind of on this journey for 7 years, and I had like my major initiation 7 years ago, the things that you're saying are things that I feel like my soul, my spirit is like, okay, Kylie, like, this is it's ready. We're ready to go deeper. Let's go deeper.
Yeah.
Let's go higher. And it was really just a really supportive thing to listen to. So thank you
Oh,
so much.
yeah, I love that. Of course. I mean, I feel like I really see it as like that's what we're all here to do for each other. Like there's no like hierarchy. It's like we're all just experiencing, like we're all I love that quote of like once you learn to listen, like everyone is your teacher, and it's like we're literally, and I also like some a quote that I deeply resonate with is like we're all just walking each other home. Like I
Mm,
literally feel like we're entering into this era, and what I feel we're being called into is like no longer, I mean, the whole what we see unfolding in the world is like we're putting people on pedestals, and we're saying they have the answers and they'll save the day and they know what's right and da da da. And it's like, no, what about we're all just so, I think you were the one who literally in the masterclass said like what was coming through for you was like inner authority, right? Yeah.
mhm,
And it's like, no, like we're here to self initiate, self lead. And through that, like we become these walking transmissions for each other. But there's
mhm,
no, like, we're just embodying truth. And therefore, like, it's like this beautiful ongoing energetic exchange that we're receiving from each other. And yeah, so I think it's super beautiful that we got to connect, and I feel deeply honored to be interviewed on your podcast. And um yeah, I just look forward to knowing you and going deeper in whatever ways unfold.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm glad that you said that because I want to honor both of our time and bring this conversation to a close. But there's a lot that I'm interested in talking with you about. So maybe we can, if you're open to it, have another
Yeah,
conversation sometime.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, great. Because I'm just like, oh, there's a lot that I know that even the fact that you have a course, The Alchemized Woman, that's all about your hormonal
Yeah.
cycle. I'm just like, oh, please, like let's share about that because it's so important.
Yeah.
So
Totally. Yeah.
important. So
Yeah. There's so much, right?
yeah, there is. There is so
Oh
much.
my gosh.
And another thing too, this is just planting seeds so people can look forward to it someday. No rush on the timeline.
Yeah.
But your experience with ayahuasca and just
Yeah.
psychedelics and plant medicine really as a conversation and
Yeah.
how it itself is such a sacred initiation. Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so
100%.
we'll
Yeah.
save that for a later date.
Yeah, that's a whole other. I will say that was a factor of this year for sure.
Yes.
So we can thank ayahuasca for that. And yeah, that would be a really powerful conversation for another
Yes.
time.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to know that that's a possibility in the future, and I really look
Yeah.
forward to that. So I'll obviously link everything for everybody so they can check out your website and your Instagram.
Yeah.
That is so aesthetically pleasing and inspirational and beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and
Yeah.
we'll talk again sometime soon.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kylie.
Yes, my pleasure.
See you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching this video and listening to this conversation. If you want to learn more about Elizabeth and check out her information and maybe work with her, you can click the link in the description to find her website, theadeptist.com, or you can just search her on Instagram, The Adeptist, and you will find all of those beautiful posts that I referred to in the beginning of this episode. And aside from that, if you want to go further with me and hang out with me on Zoom, I am hosting twice per month, every other Monday, free women's circles. So, in these women's circles, I kind of take us into this experience of exploring ourselves and then sharing that with each other through writing prompts and, in the beginning, a guided meditation and just kind of like a short breathing exercise to really disconnect from the external world and go inward. And these women's circles are just a really great opportunity to reconnect with yourself. Do these writing prompts that I guide us through and just see what comes up and give yourself an hour and a half to get still and to write and to process and to share and to be heard and seen in a very non-judgmental and safe, loving, supportive container. So I hope to see you there. If you're interested in that, you can click the link in the description. Or you can go over to my website, kyliemlewis.com, and just click on Women's Circles. You'll see information there, and then you can scroll down to the bottom where you will fill out the registration form, and you'll receive a link to join me on Zoom for whichever date that you choose. Aside from that, come over and join me on Facebook in my Facebook community, Happy Healthy Women, and find me on Instagram, Kylie M. Lewis. I hope to see you there. Bye.